Hey guys, welcome to Biomassed. I'm not sure what the episode is, but we're glad for you joining in with us tonight. And we actually got a new guest, so that's good stuff.
You're
So
gonna
thank you
pull
for
a
tuning
Jason,
in.
huh? All right.
Yeah, it's what 20, 30 something. I've lost track. Was it
I,
29?
I think it's 29.
Okay, well it's some more accurate than he usually is. He's usually off by 4 or 5 or so. But anyways, yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We're glad to have you here tonight. Late start as usual, but you know how it goes. So we'll start with some quick introductions. We'll start with our new guest here, Lethargic. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you're all about?
I started playing Dust back in right when the servers merged between Tranquility and the Dust server back in January 13. And I've been following Dust ever since it was announced back in 2009. I was super excited about it because I've been playing Eve off and on since 2003. And I've just watched Eve grow and just become this phenomenal game. And I was excited for further prospects of Dust because I was more of an FPS guy. And I've been career heavy up until the last month. I was with War Ravens for the first two months, and then Snow Raven kicked me up for a dumb reason, and I don't like him. Then Quick Gloves of Severed Trueblood picked me up, and I was with Severed Trueblood for a couple months, or not a couple months, like a year and a couple months, and then once Judas Iscariot left, I followed him into Bloodline Rebellion in the hopes that we'll transfer our corp to Eve Legion when it comes out. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
All right, sounds good. Leither?
Hey guys, same intro as past weeks. I seem to have become a bit of a recurring visitor by this point. I'm Leither. I'm an officer in Mullen Mob, and I used to be the planetary conquest organizer for Rise of Legion.
Yeah, we coerce him to come in and show up at the show every week because we need people, and he's a good guest. So we force him to come in here, and we keep him chained up, and
It's pretty hot.
Talk. Yeah, it's a thing with him and Zell. I just make sure it's all safe and whatnot, but it's their thing. I don't get involved. But I'm Pokey Dravon, CEO of OSG Planetary Operations, co-host here on Biomassed, and long-term Dust player. It's been way too long, but we're still here. All right, go ahead, Zell.
I'm Soraya Xel, CPM1 member and leader in the Top Men Alliance.
All right, so as per usual, we'll probably start off this episode talking to Soraya, member of CPM, obviously. Give us an update. I hear you had a pretty busy week with CCP, so what's going on?
Yeah, we had 2 meetings scheduled this week, Monday and Tuesday, and one of them we did not have enough time to get into everything, so we ended up having a third meeting for Wednesday, and that one was supposed to be an hour, and it was like 2.5 hours. So we spent like 5.5 hours with CCP this week. So suffice to say, we covered a lot. They were pretty good meetings. Our first and third meeting were with CCP Rotati and CCP Lajibro, and then the second meeting was with CCP Rouge as well as CCP Rotati and CCP Lajibro. So the first and third meetings we were mostly covering future work on Dust. I cannot divulge what it is, but it's good stuff all around, in my opinion. And then we went on Tuesday. We got kind of the overview of the entirety of what CCP Shanghai is working on, including, of course, Legion. And we spent a lot of that time talking to Rouge, and specifically on conveying just how important it is that they communicate about where Legion is right now, because I think Dust is doing really well, and I think that there's a lot of potential for it to continue doing well and doing even better. But a lot of players are, of course, very hung up on waiting for more information on Legion, and CCP needs to get that done. So I definitely think he understands. I'm hoping we'll see something, but as with many other times that we've asked for communication, we'll have yet to see if we see it.
Did he offer any explanation on why they've been so quiet since FanFest?
Yeah. We understand what's going on.
Okay. But I'm guessing you can't share it because
no.
NDA.
No.
Okay.
I'll take that as a good sign.
Yeah,
I'm actually very, very, very optimistic about where Shanghai is right now. So,
See, that's a good sign
You
right
are
there.
all such happy people.
Yeah, it's a good thing we ain't gonna get shanghaied by Shanghai. Oh snap!
they're
I'm enjoying. There's a corp called the Rouge Wedding who I'm actually not sure who owns it, which is a bit embarrassing. But I know that they've been doing some PC logistics, and it always brings a little bit of a smile to me when Dust Alerts goes by, and it's like the Rouge Wedding takes district from X.
can you have another corp called the S514 player base, and they can duke it out.
That would be awesome.
We can arrange that. It's not difficult.
You should. It would be a good screenshot, I think, to have have the final scoreboard displayed with that. It'd be pretty funny.
They're
See if I
not
can't look into
allowed.
that.
They're not allowed to talk to each other at all.
Absolutely not. It would have to be like I'd have to like secretly inform two different groups, and it's like you're gonna have a battle against two. Doesn't matter. Here's the money.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, and then periodically you'll have another corp, which is CCP marketing, which will consistently beat the shit out of CCP development team, and then they'll try to send communication to marketing. Marketing will just say no and not pass it on to the players, and it'll be great. We can actually have a little play about it.
Well, maybe that'll happen less often now. I saw that the CCP Alliance. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the
It dissolved.
CCP Alliance disbanded last week.
I saw that.
They did not pay their soft bill.
Is that actually the reason?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny.
Fox4 tweeted it.
Yeah, I checked
That's
that.
great.
It's true.
I mean, CCP is that bad at their own game. That's the thing to bear in mind. They're that bad at playing their own game. They forgot their soft bill.
It's an automatic pay system, for their alliance, and you thought that they could have used dev hacks to just give them, 999 trillion ISK, but nope. Somehow they forgot to pay their bill.
Pushing buttons is hard, man. Come on.
You can bet your ass that there's a character who runs whatever the Executor Corp was, that they just made, and they probably made it like 6 years ago or some shit, and stuck some amount of money that seemed reasonable at the time, and completely forgot about it. So it's not actually that surprising compared to an actual active alliance, but it's still fucking hilarious.
They've done worse. I think because it. Does anybody remember? I think didn't the dust514.com domain expire at one point too?
Yeah,
that sounds right. Something like that.
What was that, an expiry or was that DNS issues? I remember having
I think it was actually an expiration because I think we whoised it and it indeed was renewed that day after it came back up. So
that is actually rather serious.
Yeah, that could go south real quick if someone snatches it up.
No, it can't actually. Domain, it's impossible to. It's pretty close to impossible to lose a domain that way. Because what most registrars do is they will automatically renew every domain. And the reason they do this is because they figure, it doesn't cost them a lot to do it. And what they will do is if you do not renew your domain and it expires, suddenly if you want to renew it, it costs an extra $80, which is like 10 times the cost of a domain renewal if you don't have it done in time. So they bank on basically that at least 10% of all their domain expirations are people who didn't mean to expire it. And then if it doesn't get picked up a couple of months after it expires, then they will auction it off. So yeah, domain registrars actually they handle that at your expense, of course.
Well, I guess it's probably lucrative, so I can't really blame them. But anyway, so yeah, for back to Dust news, one of the big things that came out, which was actually a bit of a shock to me, it was really interesting, is the Apex suits, which if you haven't been paying attention, the Apex suits are basically BPO prototype suits, which come pre-fit with standard-only gear, and they're pre-fit, and you can't edit them at all. And you could initially, but that was a glitch. But you aren't supposed to edit them.
Dude. And
oh, geez.
The other thing too, I just want to throw this in here about this glitch. When this glitch happened that let you customize the fittings of the Apex suits, they had 999 PGU and CPU. PG and CPU, so you can just imagine the sort of fits you could create with that.
Yeah, I didn't really log in. I'm like, I'm not gonna deal with all of that until they fix it.
Kane Sparrow had a BPO Amar assault with a cloaking device.
Oh, that's
with
that's
a proto
different.
cloak.
What
Seems
really
like the
su-
obvious thing.
You could proto cloak, like with that much fitting, you could proto cloak any suit.
Oh, sure, easily.
And still fit prototype modules in every slot.
Yeah, what really sucked that night was that my corporation, Bloodline Rebellion, as well as I'm sure a couple others, had PCs that night too, and I heard it was just going to be horrible.
Classic
It's
CCP.
interesting at the least, I guess.
On the one hand, you'd think they'd roll them back, but they've never historically actually adjusted results from their own fuck-ups.
Well, it's kind of hard to say, oh well, you just spent $25 or whatever on this. We just removed it from your account.
No, I mean the PC results.
Oh, the PC results. Yeah, they've always, like, with anything, like, it's the same with nullsec too. In most cases, is no matter what the screw up is, once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
If you're good enough, you can take it back.
I was kind of more understanding when there isn't like this payment structure thing going on, or there have been actual like technical meltdowns that have been somewhat significant, and it's always like real disappointing when you come out and fight and it's like, yeah, so it fucked up, sorry about that. I remember when PC released, we had some problems. They had a glitch that they hadn't repaired, and it actually cost us days at the beginning. It was kind of sad. People kept districts when they lost a lot of battles, and that's what it amounted to. And since that region of time was a lot of consolidation of territory, losing time to a glitch was actually pretty bad. It's probably the only time that it was relevant in a lot of ways.
But okay, so continuing on from our diversion on the glitch.
Yeah, so yeah, their prototype BPO suits fit with standard gear only, so they have all the slots of a prototype suit, but they've got a CCP made fit, which most of them are terrible. I think the Caldari Commando has a swarm launcher and a sniper rifle, which is funny because the swarm launcher doesn't actually get a bonus from the Caldari Commando, and you're basically screwed up close with the sniper rifle. So some of the fits are pretty lulzy, but they're interesting to say the least. The CCP claims that what they're for is for new players to get a prototype suit BPO fit with standard modules to make it more competitive against people who have prototype. I think that's a load of shit because the suits are expensive. They're $30-ish if you buy them with Aurum, and you can get them through the LP store, which is actually pretty cool, but it's 10,000 LP and 10 million NISC, and if you've got 10,000 LP and 10 million NISC to spare, you're not a new player. So I think the whole bit that they're for new players is a load of shit.
Well, I'd say the OR version is for new players.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're banking on, actually.
Yeah, but I think the thing is they aren't that great of suits, though. I mean, sure, they're better than like
you don't want them to be that great because they're freaking BPO.
Well, we're also looking at them from the perspective of the veteran player. To a new player, those suits might be a godsend.
Oh,
If you consider also for BPO purchase, if you have to fit like if you buy like a Quaif BPO, you have to buy, if you want a truly infinite fitting, you have to buy BPOs of everything you fit on it. And these are, all the modules and weapons and everything in the fit.
Well, I get that, but I think the average player who picks up Dust, which is a free-to-play game, obviously, and it's like, well, here, you can buy this suit for $30 right off the bat. I don't know if they're actually going to sell, I don't know if new players are actually going to pay, $30 for the suit, not knowing much about the game.
and that's kind of my objection as well. The core concept is not one that I think is good. Okay, the idea of a suit that you pay for, that you have infinite runs of, is what has raised a lot of eyebrows, I think. And at its core, it's kind of undermines the entire concept of the resource war, the resource juggling that is Dust. And so when you bring in, if they were good, if they were actually worth anything, then that would be a bigger problem, in fact. But they're just meh. So,
well, they're meh for veteran players. And
But
it's
they're meh. Like the $30 price tag is what makes them meh for new players, though. Like I would much rather CCP, if they wanted to improve the new player experience, go through and tier side everything. That's not going to happen. But I'd much rather they did that and looked at redoing the progression structure to make new players actually have a good time and then want to spend $30 than trying to ask new players to spend $30 to have a good time. I don't think it took them that many resources to pull off, so I'm not like gonna hammer them over it. I just think it's fucking useless.
There's something else that you should be aware of too. Is that the Galente Scout has a remote explosive on it, and there isn't a remote explosive BPO anywhere. So if you can do it right, you can suicide Lavi Jihad a tank with that suit at no cost to you. And also the Galente Commando has a rifle on it. One of my court mates or friends checked the stats. The rifle that is on the Galente Commando is better than a Balix. Not kidding. The assault rifle.
Really?
Really.
That shouldn't be right. that's a mistake if that's the case.
Huh? That sounds really bad.
Yeah, well, that one's not out because I think they've only released 5 so far, and they're going to do a new set each week. Is that correct, so?
I'm not sure the timing on when they'll be released, but yeah, there's more to come.
Yeah, because there's basically one Apex suit for every race and role, and so they only released 5 of them. I can't tell you off the top of my head which ones they released this week, but they're going to be releasing those kind of in a series, I believe. So we won't see all of them right away. And which ones we get next week is, we'll see what we get. So I don't believe the Galente Commando is out, but that's definitely something to bring to CCP's attention that, hey, this is a little broken. And Lethargic's right, though, that a lot of those Apex suits do have BPOs that don't exist. Like, the one I was looking at was the Mimitar Logistics Apex suit. And it comes with, it's a Republic assault combat rifle, but it's a standard grade, but it's a BPO. And you can't get, as far as I know, you can't get assault combat rifles at a standard grade, much less a BPO, unless it's the LP store. But at that point,
I actually didn't know that. That's good to know.
Yeah, no, there's actually some bits in there that you can buy with LP. Like the standard assault combat rifle does exist for LP. Like getting that in the BPO is pretty legit because I do like that gun. I just don't like using the assault or the advanced version because I'm cheap as hell. So
Yeah.
I definitely got my eye on that one.
Yeah. Snap. I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, I can fill in. I kind of feel like if the price point were a little bit lower, I would think, especially the in-game, I think as an in-game mechanic, and I'm going to say this and then, rebut myself. As an in-game mechanic, if you were somehow able, if it were within the range of my being able to get a new player to grind into the suit within a reasonable span of time before they quit because they didn't have the suit, that would be interesting. But the reason why I brought up tier side earlier is because really what I'm saying is that would serve as a stepping point in the progression system, right? Instead of the typical progression that we have now. I almost think it's a test, but I just think the $30 price tag is too much. I don't think they're going to get any useful data out of it. And they'll make some money, sure. I mean, I say they'll get some money, I should say. Whether they'll make money from the resources they spent is an interesting question. But, did they consult you guys on this, Soraya?
Yes.
Can I ask you what your general reaction was?
I think there's a lot of promise to it. I actually like the I'm a little I expected a very different reaction from people than we got. I expected a worse reaction from people than what we got. I expected a huge amount of pay to win complaints, and there were a few, but not many, and more people were complaining about wishing the fits on them were better, which was very, very opposite of what I expected. I expected people saying this is going to be, this is too OP to provide or something, for unlimited, and then instead we got, can you make this fit better, please? But no, I think it's great that there's things that you can get. I like the idea that you can farm it out where you can buy it, and I think that CCP should do that more. with smaller scale things too, potentially. Just, but it does have to be relative. I think the price had to be that high because, again, if you look at the cost of BPO suits that have been sold so far, and then you look at the cost of BPO modules that have been sold so far, you'd be really, really trashing, the value they put in if you made them a lot cheaper than what they are. And I don't like undervaluing, the money people have already spent.
And the two things that I remembered what I was going to say was, one is that I love Dust and I don't mind putting some cash to the game so that we can have more funds in the game for our developers to do things, so I support the game, I support the content, and I'm still gonna grind out the LP and the ISK to get the other suits, but I'm going to get a couple suits here and there because, the suits, in my opinion, they're freaking awesome, for the service that they provide. And two, I was wondering, and you probably can't say anything on this, Soraya, but I wanted to know if this was like a test with what I think Rouge was talking about at FanFest for Legion, how he was going to have BPO suits that we can skill into, and then we just we put the modules on, and then it's matchmaking by meta level. Do you remember what he was talking about?
Yeah, well, that was actually CCPZ's presentation on progression. But I would note that the Legion progression demo always meant to be, or not demo, but presentation was always meant to have consumable modules. So I wouldn't say, I think that, there's a lot of ways you can read into things as being for testing. I know that's been a common suggestion, is that such and such was put into the game for testing. I would say that these decisions are made by CCP Rattati, and CCP Rattati's entire motivation is to make Dust a fun and good and successful game. I mean, like, if something is done and it works or doesn't work and we can see how that goes, that is not something that people are going to ignore when they're talking about Legion type of things. They're going to learn things from it either way. But Dust is not having decisions made for the purposes of Legion testing. I think I could say that confidently.
Okay, yeah.
I think he's onto something right there, that when he says that it may not necessarily be for the exact purpose of testing for Legion, but I think that in terms of an exercise into Tiericide, it's certainly exactly what I expected to see. If this is a BPO suit in a Tiericide system, this is what a standard suit would look like fit with standard modules. And it can be more competitive against a full proto suit than, say, our current system, which has a weaker suit with less modules and whatnot. So I think if anything, it's an interesting glimpse into what Tiericide would look like, because I know a lot of people have confusions about what that actually means. So I think it's good to take a look at that and go, hey, look, it does actually help you against highly tanked out veteran players a little bit more than what you had before. So I think that's promising, and that they're actually looking at that as a serious concept in terms of gameplay.
Also, it's a vanity suit.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they finally are selling vanity suits, despite the other qualifications that come with this one. It'd be kind of interesting for them to have a. Of course, that would be the skinning thing, right? But
yeah, and I know people want to see that in Eve too.
Yeah, it'd just be nice if they had enough of a market that you could put some of them actually obtainable via, say, LP or ISK, and also buyable via Aurum in the same way. I think that's not a bad concept for a certain class of items. You see, of course, people who don't want to spend money are going to say that, right? So the question is, right, do you increase the uptake because people can earn them in game? I think in a certain variety of circumstances that's pretty cogent. There's a pretty cogent argument for that. You see enough people around with that camo. Hey, I want that camo. And you increase that number by allowing people to grind it out. Plus, you ISK sync around.
Allowing people to grind it isn't a bad thing. Too, it gets them playing more, and that. So you're winning either way. Either people are funding the game, or people are playing the game to get things that they want. So but I do think that the cost of not, an exclusive item, like a special item, does need to be fairly intensive to grind out to the point that it can't be, why would anyone buy this because it's that easy to just get it,
Right.
If you want to sell something and also offer it in game, it's got to be, do I want to commit a month of my life to this, or do I want to give them $5?
Here's my question: is where do we draw the line? I mean, I don't want this to. I don't want the Call of Duty fans saying, when do we get gold guns? Like when can we skin our guns to be gold?
Well, the new suits are pretty gold.
Yeah, and I don't like the new color scheme anyway.
They're pretty ugly. There's actually a pretty good thread going on on the forums where people have been posting up examples of skins from ships in EVE and saying, Rattati, you don't play EVE, but they actually have some good color palettes here, so you should probably maybe look at these, because some of them, of the skins in EVE, are actually really sexy. And I know True Adamance is posting some really good screenshots for Amar suits, and I think she really should look at it, because I mean, the Quave suits were kind of lulzy. Yay, we got a purple and pink suit. That's funny. It's all metallic and shiny, but you don't want to have people running around in spray painted suits that are bright yellow and green and orange and whatnot. I mean, it gets a little ridiculous, and you don't want to totally destroy the art style of the game. So I think they might want to reconsider kind of what color palettes they're using, and maybe tone it down a bit, because some of them are pretty goofy looking, if you ask me.
You know what would be awesome? I remember in EVE, there was this time when every active player got a snowball launcher hardpoint for their ships and an ammo pack of snowballs, and they got it for fireworks too, for different kinds of holidays. And I don't think Dust could handle fireworks, because imagine everyone shooting fireworks or Roman candles.
The real fireworks there is your PlayStation 3 exploding.
Right. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to shoot, like get some vanity bullets for, and the occasion of a holiday for cheap ISK,
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. They won't do it.
No, because it's awesome, they won't do it.
Arguably.
We can't have nice things. You know that to be true.
Very true.
You're new here. I'm that guy.
Basically,
this theme will continue to recur.
Yeah. Leither is our resident pessimist, and he helps balance me out, because I'm ignorantly not optimistic at times. So it's a good dichotomy.
I'll just call him Simon.
I don't even know what you're referencing, but I like it. Let's do that.
You uncultured heathen. All right.
But yeah, kind of going back to the reaction for the Apex, it was kind of interesting. The pay to win argument's been made for a long time, and I think a lot of things in terms of pay to win, it's fuzzy. Like I think that probably the biggest argument for pay to win would be boosters, if you ask me, and that is diminished over time when people start getting into the point where more SP doesn't really mean more effective in combat, because they've reached kind of that ceiling of usefulness. So I mean, then it kind of shifts to BPOs, and I think we have since stayed with the standard BPOs, which is really not an issue in terms of actual gameplay, because it is a standard suit, and most people don't typically run standard suits. They run advanced or prototype, especially in competitive areas like PC. I mean, anyone's playing PC, they're all decked out. It's all maxed out stuff. So in terms of BPOs of limitless, standard suits, not so much issue. The Apex is interesting. That I remember seeing when the BPO proto suits popped up on the Sissy server, and people were kind of freaking out, and Rattati was teasing us, saying, well, we'll tell you on Monday, and then the devlog never came Monday. We were all kind of freaked out, but we eventually got it, and like I said, I was really surprised, but it was interesting. Like the choice to give it only standard gear and actually lock the fitting was probably a good one, because I think it really did kind of kill that pay to win, because the suits are, like we've discussed, for veterans, not really that great. I mean, if you don't want to spend any money at all on your suits, they're a good choice. But in terms of actual effectiveness, you're probably better off with like a standard suit and put some decent modules on it, rather than a proto suit with crappy modules. So I'm glad that they kind of avoided that argument. I do find it interesting that people were asking for better fits, and I don't know if it's necessarily that they want better fits or ones that make more sense. Like I said, the Caldari Commando, its weapon choice doesn't make any sense at all because the Swarm Launcher doesn't even get a bonus in the Caldari suit. So in that regard, I'm glad to see Rattati is actually taking feedback on those fittings because they are looking at changing some things because some of them just they're not good fits, and they've reaffirmed that they're not optimized. But I think there's also some level of no one would actually fit a suit like this because it doesn't make any sense, you know?
The only suit that you're gonna really get for the the most bang for your buck is gonna be the Amar Proto Sentinel.
Why do you say that?
The Amar Sentinel has a base hit point value of 750 armor with all 5 skills, and I don't remember the shields. I think it's like 450. But they're gonna probably either put a shield module in the high slot, or a complex, or not a complex, a basic heavy damage mod, which is fine. And I've been, trying out different drop suits since I could respec, and I've tried out, Logi and Scout, and even the militia heavies, they just tear me apart. Like if I get in their face for like 1 second, boom, all my health is just gone and I'm dead. And that's just the militia heavies. And the Proto Amar Sentinel comes with 4 low slots and a grenade and a sidearm. And if people can shred that much with a militia heavy, I'm kind of anticipating the Apex Amar Sentinel.
Well, that's true. I mean, the Amar suits do have very high base HP, and if they do stack the lows with armor plates, I'm not sure if they did that. I don't have the. There's actually a spreadsheet floating around that has the proposed fits for all the suits. I don't have that in front of me right now, but if they do stack it with 4 basic armor plates, that is a considerable amount of HP. So I can see your point there. It's just a matter if they actually do that or not.
What else? What they do with it?
Sorry.
Wait, we're talking about CCP. Never mind. They could put like stamina mods or kin cats on it or something like that. I don't know.
Oh God. Well,
or profile dampeners.
At least it can't get worse, right? Than the current.
I'm knocking on my desk for you right now.
It's okay. I haven't got any luck left. I've been here too long. I was going to say that Aeon Amity, on a topic of BPOs, he was always the poster child for arguing that BPOs in general are very bad for the game. I think I haven't always agreed, but it's something that needs to be discussed, I think, faintly frequently, because it does have a pretty severe impact. Aeon likes to argue that the economic impact of adding even standard BPOs, which he is against having in the game, is significant. And he used to cite some of the old economic numbers that we would get out that there were tons of standard deaths. Of course, those are lost to the sands of forum time, so I can't link them anymore. For the longevity of Dust, it's an interesting question. Is adding additional BPOs really okay, right? Even, and especially, this is maybe the kicker. We're talking about the efficacy of these suits, right? The efficacy of these fittings. At its core, I don't like the Apex suit idea in our current Dust. In the sense that having a BPO suit that has stuff on it that works well, and is completely and totally free. It undermines the entire basis of Dust 5.4's resource system. This is not really something I want to ignore and have creep up on us later. The only reason why these Apex suits are even remotely okay is the fact that they're shit. Otherwise it would be really bad. That's worrying to me. What I wouldn't want to see happen is to see a stepping stone kind of thing. I'm not saying that's going on, but it could, right? Where we put in a BPO suit and people want it a little bit better. It gets a little bit better. Things get a little bit better, and then finally we get something that's just totally worth it and that everybody makes free ISK off of.
I have a fix for that. Actually, I just thought of it. In Eve, when you have a BPO, that means you can make that item, with the bill of materials that is required. and typically that's cheaper than actually buying said item off of the market. So what if these BPOs, instead of being burnable free, they actually to the cost to restock them is like half the price, or maybe 10%, so that at least you're paying something. Does that make sense?
Well, that is true, but it lessens the effect. It doesn't remove the effect. It just because every time you die with a BPO, you're basically making the money you would have lost otherwise. And yes, I agree that you can reduce the cost, but all that really does is reduce the effect of the BPO. I think Leither's on a roll there with the fact that it's actually severely economic damage having BPOs around if they are not universal in their implementation. Like if not everyone has it for like that particular thing, like what they're talking about with Legion, where all suits are BPOs. Well, in that case, they just up the cost of modules, and then it's it's all the same. But when you have a system like Dust, where certain people have BPOs because they either bought them in the LP store or purchased them with Aurum, well, then that's an inherent advantage that they are literally producing more ISK effectively per match than someone who doesn't have it. And that does have a rather large effect over a long period of time because, even though it's a standard suit, it does add up over time. And then that can cause severe economic issues because it does mess with that resource scarcity because you're basically making suits out of nothing. They're just poofing into existence. There's no loss in losing them. And that's very problematic when it comes to an actual economic system. Now, for Dust, it's not so much a problem because we don't really have an economy, but it can become a problem, especially when you start openly trading stuff or manufacturing things in Legion and whatnot. So it is a very scary thing that we have to keep an eye on because I think it can get out of hand very quickly. In terms of Apex suits, I think this was, as we said before, a test, sort of a proof of concept, if you will, for Tiericide inside a tiered system. And they basically had to make it BPO or make it crappy just to show that you can't take a non-tiered something and stick it in a tiered system without making it inherently different than everything else. So, I kind of get why they did it. It's just, it's not good. It's not something I would want to see in a long-term situation,
Yeah, and wrapping around back to the beginning of the conversation, I'd still really, the core concept of what Rat says he'd like to see out of it, I would love to have even you see, even there has to be some pull to the game before you ask people to pay money into it. And I just feel like this is kind of the reverse. Like asking someone, even if, say it was $5, don't argue with me about price points and everything else. Just say it was $5 for the sake of it being a price that might seem reasonable, right? A lot more reasonable to a very new player. I still think that's not a good place for the game to sit. Like, okay, so you're going to get in and you get this suit and you can pay $5 and you're not shit. And at least you might enjoy your first minutes. There's still deep problems. The game still needs to hook you more quickly. I still want Tiericide. It's not going to happen because we just spent 6 months balancing the status quo. And not that it was a bad 6 months spent, or I just, I wish we had sat down and actually had substantive change, but I'm just a fucking crazy, so don't mind me.
I get what you're saying. I almost wonder if they could have done the Apex suits, but instead of having BPO, just be a less expensive pre-fit suit that was less customizable but cheaper than a proto suit. So it was more accessible to new players because it's less expensive, but it obviously lacks that flexibility you get with actually buying the real suit. And I think in this, it comes down to basically we could make money off of this, so we did, rather than just implementing an Apex suit as a pre-fit you could buy with ISK or LP or something, more accessible to the new player than, a $30 BPO. BPOs are great, but I don't know why this couldn't have necessarily been done with in-game currency as well. But it's not grinding for a BPO and LP.
Another thing is there is a lot of people who don't want to have to fit a suit and don't want to have to worry about restocking. And it's not really the core what you expect from Dust, but there are people who would be more than happy to pay to just come in and have a suit and shoot stuff.
Well, and that's why I kind of like the idea of
there's some other games out there too. I'm sorry. That is
But would
actually where I
CCP
draw the line.
like you to play their game or someone else's game?
But like that's just inconsistent. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, I agree that there's a certain I think that the system needs to be easier to understand at its core, easier to interface with. Why is it such a problem to fit a suit? You know, like if the game was actually getting substantive changes, one of the old things that I used to kind of like to talk about, but which was never really on the table, was having a fitting system like they have in Eve, where you can give people fittings, you know, and say, here's a fitting, let me exchange it with you through a chat or something. And then you can actually go buy it, right? And then it was similar with like imagining a public crest system, right? That would allow you to do skills for people. So it's like, here, go to our site, hit this button, log in. It's going to set up your skilling plan for your first 5 days, you know, and you're going to be good to go. That kind of thing would have been so helpful and would still be so helpful into getting people who don't want to fit their shit, which is completely understandable because, you know, it does take time. And if you're the type of person who wants to crash and not think about it and have fun, which is me right now, more than it used to be, it totally makes sense. But I feel like the game's infrastructure should just support having the community bring that supply the particular data points within the structure. Like, if you can't restock your suits, like, the game literally brings up the dialogue if you're out, and you can press right on your D-pad. Like, it's part of the game. Like, it's part of the game that you're losing money whenever you die. And I feel like that's definitely something to me where I will say, if you don't like that, this isn't the game for you. At least that's how I have felt about Dust's core in the past.
Well, let's look at this from a different light. With patch 1.9 came a lot of different ways to spend your Aurum. There was the instant battle, or the instant SP at the end of match. There was the triple stacking every booster under the sun. You know, there was a whole bunch of different new ways to spend your Aurum and pay more money into Dust, including the Mercenary, Veteran, and Elite packs. These Apex suits also serve into the monetization reform that Dust needed. That, well, I think it needed, because there wasn't a whole lot of ways for Dust to make revenue apart from people buying the modules and the, you know, monthly booster. And so I think, you know, apart from all of these issues that we're talking about, this is also a stretch for CCP to make more revenue off of Dust, which is a given. So I think it's a necessity in that point as well. Could it have been done better as far as the execution of the service provided? Probably, but I think that these Apex suits as a whole are serving Dust a lot better as far as what they're providing for us.
I don't think they're hurting. I will give them that in their current state. So they're not good enough to hurt anything too bad. One of the things I was going to say earlier, Pokey was making this argument that about why standard BPOs aren't that big of a deal in Dust. And he was saying people don't wear standard gear. And, you know, more emphatically is that standard gear is kind of crappy, right? Like, in general, it's very hard to... It usually can make you more money in the current environment to take an advanced suit, if you're good enough in it, than to take a BPO, because it will increase your payouts enough that it will compensate for the additional losses compared to a BPO suit. So there's something there. Not that people, you know, there were a certain class of people who, when the militia BPOs are real popular, they would run in those just because it didn't have cost, right? And even though you should be looking at this as a cost-benefit analysis, right? Like, if I pay 10k ISK more, I will in general make 15k ISK more in the battle because of my overall effectiveness increase. There are a lot of people who don't do that kind of analysis, and they just rather have free shit because they know at least that they're not losing anything.
That's true to a point, though. If I equip a full proto suit, at full cost, that doesn't mean that my 160,000 ISK suit is going to make me 160 extra thousand ISK. There's diminishing returns on that.
Oh no, that's totally true. But the point is, like, standard BPOs. I kind of agree with Aeon at the core. Is the point at the core? BPOs are kind of an eyebrow raiser when, like Pokey said, they're not like, it's not like everybody has that thing as a BPO. It's when you've got different people who do have this kind of non-existent item that poofs into being. It's actually problematic at its core. The only reason why it has ever worked is because the thing that is provided for free is just not very effective. It's the same case with these Apex things. So, rail rifle charge up time.
Okay, yeah. I don't want to hammer this BPO thing into the ground. It's definitely a good discussion. It'll probably be ongoing because CCP's recent rush of monetization, as we've discussed, it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So we'll likely see new ways to spend your money, and I'm sure BPOs of varying types and degrees will be popping up. So we'll obviously keep an eye on it, and we'll see where it goes from there. But another hot topic recently has been the rail rifle, and a lot of changes to the rail rifle recently. One of them, I actually haven't been following it too close, but I know they increased the charge time. 0.3 to 0.6, was it?
Yeah, it's a bummer Jason's not here to be angry.
But they lowered the kick, though.
I could be angry for Jason.
Go for it.
I'm angry enough for 3 men. Or women, on a good day with my voice. Yeah, I really don't like spool-up chime changes. I beat a horse to death last week about this. It's like CCP heard me and made the exact change that I really wouldn't want them to do. Spool-up time is a responsiveness thing. When you increase spool-up time, it makes the gun feel less responsive. I've seen threads on the forums to that effect because of this change. I haven't had it in my hands yet. I'm sure it'll frustrate me. It's a balancing tool. Just because the numbers add up does not mean it's fun to play with. Okay? And I genuinely feel that even with the increased kick, I thought that was like a debatable but kind of okay place. The increased kick and like 0.3 spool up. When I played with it, it wasn't so shit that I couldn't use it.
I have to agree with you, even though I hate rail rifles with a seething passion because I'm a career heavy and rail rifles piss me off like no other. A 0.6 second spool up time is ridiculous. And that was to combat the effectiveness of CQC. And I posted on the forums, I was like, why increase the spool up time and make a gun less responsive when instead you could have just increased the dispersion of the hip fire by a considerable amount that would instead make the player at CQC want to instead aim down the sights as the weapon is supposed to be used as a long-range tool. There's no need to, make this even worse, And adding on to that, there was also talk about increasing or reintroducing a spool-up time for the heavy machine gun. And everyone's like, yay, nerf the fucking heavies. And I'm like, oh, dude, no. Heavies have a lot to look out for. Granted, I will admit that it's become a lot easier to be a heavy, and that makes me upset because I've been a heavy since 2013 January. But they're gonna add a. Ratati said it was a good idea to discuss adding a spool time to the heavy machine gun. But when you have like scouts and whatnot, and people just breathing down your neck, getting right in your face and strafing left to right, that spool up time is really going to cost you. So when I hear that the rail rifles are getting, a doubled spool time, you're going to have to wait for over half a second before you can fire at someone else at range. In the meantime, they're not going to be just not shooting at you. They're going to be, picking you off. And so why not just increase the hipfire dispersion?
I don't know that I have ever thought I would say this, but I guess it's kind of CCP can now patch too fast. Oh my god, the tables have turned.
Wow.
Yeah, I
this
don't
is-
even. I don't even know what you just said. I don't understand it.
It was a bit for effect, but the point is, like, I didn't see that much discussion on this change. This wasn't like was there a thread posted? I'm just full of shit.
Which thread? What are you talking
Like
about?
there wasn't a thread on the rail rifle stuff, right?
There was chatter about, but nothing really concrete. I think what you're getting at is that they're making changes so quickly now that they aren't properly collecting data between each change. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they're not vetting it past the community in this particular case. And it's a single case. I'm not going to try to generalize it and, say that it should be or is representative of the way they've done patches in the past, other aspects of the game, at least the balance. But this was real fast. I didn't get the impression that it was extremely well deliberated upon by many people. I feel like Rat just decided it was a good change and he just stuck it in there, which is, I'm not trying to lump the guy, is the point. Like, it's not a bad sounding idea. It changes the balance. It changes the numbers, right? This is the hard part about having spool-up time discussions, because it does. It changes the numbers. It changes the dynamic. But it also changes, like, the actual usability and fun you can have with a gun. And yeah, over half a second. Like, I used to play Guild Wars, and the original Guild Wars, and in PvP, if you had like a skill that took over half a second to cast, that was a kind of middling long cast time. That was in an MMO casting spells, like, this is an FPS. It's a much shorter time frame. Like 0.6 seconds is fucking big.
Good luck trying to take out a sniper with a rail rifle.
Yeah, I mean, it even injects in the kind of traditional
I
dynamic.
just don't think the rail rifle is good enough at this point to justify it for its range. It's got the range, but it doesn't do enough at that range to make it worth all the penalties.
Well, especially since the game is, in many cases, the actual important areas of the game are very CQC, so that range is not as useful as you may think it is, because when you actually need to fight somebody, you're going to be closer than than what you're actually able to put out. So at that point, the range is useless if the target's going to always be much closer. So I think totally gimping the short range effectiveness is a little much. I mean, obviously you don't want it to be a hipfire machine like it was before, but at the same time, 0.6 is pretty insane. Now, one post I saw Rotati actually make, which is kind of interesting, was someone posted, someone basically said, can the Caldari Assault now get its bonus to be charge reduction? And Rotati replied, yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking, or something along those lines. So I'm curious if what they're going to do, or what he's going to attempt to do, is change that Caldari Assault bonus to maybe a 10% reduction to charge time per level. So at level 5, it drops that rail rifle charge back down to 0.3 and actually makes it, what it used to be.
That's
And
not so bad.
I'm kind of with Leither on this one, that I feel messing with the charge time sort of gets the desired effect, but I don't think it's a really good fix for it. I think there's other things they could have done, like you mentioned, playing with the recoil on hipfire and maybe adjusting how the ADS mechanics work and whatnot. I think the charge time, while I like the idea of it, that you've got a delayed time before you can actually start outputting DPS, once you start ramping that up really high, like to 0.6, where it's actually really noticeable, it does kind of diminish the enjoyment of the gun, because, like Xel said, yeah, it's a long range weapon, but it doesn't do enough at that range given all the drawbacks. And I think it's just the rail rifle's at a point where it doesn't feel quite right. I mean, I'm not the best rail rifle user. I'm not a
I can
particular
probably
fan of
line
them,
up
but
a sniper shot in 0.6 seconds. Is probably the point.
yeah,
Which is what I was saying.
Yeah, it's just like the gun doesn't feel good. It's not like some of the other weapons where you're like, yeah, okay, this feels about right. The rail rifle, it's just I feel like they're tweaking it and trying to get it right, and it's just not quite going in the right direction. So, I think Leither's onto a thing there where he said that they're almost patching it too fast, and I don't think there's enough discussion going on because, like I said, they're like, we're ramping up the charge time. I'm like, oh shit, when did that happen? Because I read the forums pretty regularly, and I didn't see anything about that until it happened.
I didn't know about it until today. I haven't actually played in however many of intervening days it has been, and like I just saw a post and it's like, yeah, it was changed, and it wasn't from a dev. It was like just one of the forum posts asking about it. It was like, what?
Yeah, it feels like a knee-jerk reaction, and it's not a good one. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not ratting on Rattati, no pun intended, but this just wasn't a good fix in my mind. I don't think they really did a good job with this one, and I kind of wish they would slow down, take a deep breath, and go, okay, let's actually have a real long, in-depth conversation about what needs to change to reach these goals of how we want the weapon to perform at what range and in what sort of situation. And I think that needs to happen because right now it's like rapid fire changes, and while it's good to have good responsiveness, I feel like it's causing problems now that it's almost too quick without enough feedback. Because I mean, effectively, if you're making changes so fast that the players aren't even noticing that you're making changes, that's the same as not talking to them at all, and that's obviously not good. And I don't want them to get into a bad habit of doing that. I mean, this is a one-time thing, but you just be careful.
Spool time. This is kind of an interesting point that occurs to me, where we're talking about spool time decrease as a racial bonus. And we have the classic comparison in the heat buildup for Amar weapons, right? The idea being that there's a penalty that makes the gun less usable, and that putting it on its proper racial suit makes it more usable. I wanted to ask this about the rail rifle, but it actually applies to the Amar suits too. Is that actually an okay design point? It seems to have worked. Like, I don't think it has that many negative effects for the Amar stuff, because the Amar stuff is very usable, right? Even without the Amar suits, it just becomes very effective in the right hands. I would almost think it's like just a really great template on the Amar side for what racial stuff should look like, right? You can put it on another suit and it will work. But if you want to be an expert, if you want to be a specialist, you've got to put it on a Amar suit because you're just going to build up heat too fast.
You know what else would? Sorry. You know what else would benefit from this charge time is the charge sniper rifle. People be pulling off shots and nothing flat.
Well, and that's a kind of a scary side effect as well, is that you don't want to make that too strong, and which is why I've always kind of danced on the issue of. I mean, Leither's absolutely right that the assault bonuses, I think, were intended to offset the negative side of each gun. So in the case of the Amar suit, it's the heat buildup. In the case of Minmatar weapons, it's the relatively small magazine compared to their fire rate. They tend to run out of ammo before they have to reload pretty quickly, so they get the increased magazine size. And that's kind of where the Galente and Caldari assault bonuses have always kind of come into question, like, they're not bad, but they don't really fit the template, like you said. So I mean, in terms of spool reduction, that's completely right. That if they increase the spool reduction, that becomes the primary downside of the gun. So it would make sense that you would make that Caldari assault bonus be spool reduction. Now you do need to be careful because, like you mentioned, with that charge rail rifle, charge sniper rifle, you don't want to have that be too insane where they're able to just fire off shots much faster than is originally intended. So I mean, if they do go that direction, they gotta be careful. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or the bolt pistol.
Yeah, bolt pistol. Even after they nerfed it a bit, it's a pretty beastly weapon. I enjoy playing with it.
Oh, me too. I put it on my Sentinels.
I guess the thing I would say is I don't think at a 0.6 second spool up time that the gun is actually usable, like the Amar weapons are. And I question whether you can have a spool-up time that is usable, that is encourage use on the Caldari suit as opposed to not caring, right? It's you're talking fractions of a second, so it just gets so. And the other thing is that, of course, just like with the Amar, the gun can't be so good without that drawback that everyone just goes into Caldari suit because it's so good, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of matching racial weapons and suits. I think that's definitely a thing from Eve, and I think that should definitely play over to Dust and Legion. Now, like you bring up a very good point that it's a very difficult balancing act. Like some people have argued that the tactical scrambler rifle, the normal type, is extremely hard to use without that Amar suit because the heat buildup is pretty damn high, and so you don't want to make a situation where the drawback is so painful that you have to use the suit to make it viable, but you also don't want to make it so small that you don't care about the assault bonus and just say, screw it, I'll rather have, a command or whatever for the damage, because that drawback isn't an issue. So it is very much a numbers game in getting those fractions of seconds or those, points of heat buildup, and really tuning it to make it feel like I'm getting a noticeable benefit from this assault bonus, but I'm not totally screwed if I'm using it on something else,
here's a speculative kind of thing. I don't usually do this, but I'm kind of at the end of my rope, so might as well speculate. What if they added modules that just exactly paralleled these racial bonuses, right?
Well, you see, Eve has that, and you can get a module for just about anything you want to do in Eve, and that's one of the things I was trying to formulate in the threads was to get more modules that do more things in our suits. But the problem is that we already have a crap load of items on the market, and I don't know if this is true or not. But what they were implying at FanFest is that it's difficult to put a lot of new items on the market, and to put the amount of items that you're talking about to modify the different stats of a weapon, that would be pretty substantial.
Well, yeah, you don't have to tell me twice that they don't have the resources to do it.
I was trying to say nicely.
No, I mean, I totally agree. That's why it's speculative, right? Like, I kind of pose it as, is this a design thing that can even be okay? I mean, the problem that arises is would you restrict it off of the suits that already have this pre-made bonus? Would you give diminishing returns or restrict the returns? The essential stacking penalty. The idea being, say you had a Caldari suit and you had the spool-up timer reduction mod, right? And the Caldari suit also gave spool-up time reduction. Now you're fitting like two of these things. The rail rifle has no spool-up time, right? For instance.
Or the charge rifle.
Yeah, or the charge sniper rifle, or the Amar tactical has no heat buildup, and you just get a freaking auto fire controller, and do that crazy BS. That's kind of the drawback. So they'd have to have pretty severe stacking penalties that stacked even if you had the intrinsic bonus on your suit, right? It's like, once you go past this, your module is only going to get you so much. But all speculation, you're right. They certainly won't put it in Dust. Hard to balance, takes resources.
I mean, eventually...
Might be an actual substantive change, and they don't really do those, so...
Eventually, I would love to see something like an actual, like weapon mod slots, like separate from the suits themselves, so you'd fit your gun, and then the gun, and based on, it would affect your fittings as well, how much that particular gun costs to put on your suit fitting wise. So that the suit, I would prefer if suit modules actually stuck to things that pertain to your suit, and then your gun had its own to-dos and could have things like reticles and stuff like that as well. But that's big dreams right there.
We'll get it from sleeper tech and wormholes.
Yeah, I mean, I missed the camera sight on the Galente.
I fucking hated that thing.
That was cool. It was different. That's why it was unique to Dust. That's why I loved it.
I hated it.
I mean, agree to disagree. I had a preference for it. I liked having one of the reasons I used the rail rifle in the past is because the sight is good. Like, I really don't like the iron sight. We're in the year 30,000 or some shit, and I'm using iron sights on an assault rifle. What the fuck?
On a suit you can't see through because your face is covered up. It's like, what are you aiming down? You can't see out of your suit. Your suit has cameras that you're looking at a screen on the inside. It doesn't make any sense to have iron sights.
Lore reasons aside, I actually just don't. I personally preferred the camera sight because to me it gave me that good field of vision and it gave me a little bit of zoom. I like the reflex sight on the rail rifle. Just in terms of its visuals. I like the combat rifles. I have a hard time controlling the combat rifle because I'm fucking bad, but
I like the irons.
I think going back to
toggling that would be nice.
Yeah, I think going back to the topic of having modules that offset the downsides of the weapon, I think you are going into very dangerous territory because, like you said, you can get some really unintended effects, like rail rifles that fire immediately, which totally negates the downside of the weapon and gives it the full benefit of the range, or a laser rifle that will not overheat just because you've got stacked heat sinks on it. I mean, as cool as that would be, I think having a direct bonus is very dangerous because you're basically allowing the player to directly negate the downside of a gun, which makes it balanced, like heat buildup or spool time. I mean, a bonus on a suit is one thing because it encourages you to fit things a certain way, which I think is good. Matching is good, but you got to be really careful. So, I mean, if you want to go down a path like Soraya was saying, where you can fit your gun with mods on it, I think that's fine, but every mod should probably have like a downside then. I mean, like ammo types in EVE will have that, where you'll have bonus damage for antimatter rounds, but you have a significant drop in range. And I think that's easier to balance that way because you allow people to customize and tweak their guns, but not necessarily do like a straight upgrade to offset balancing mechanics like spool time and heat buildup. So you got to be really careful with that stuff because when you have mechanics like that make the gun from being overpowered, giving the players the ability to negate that will make that gun overpowered,
Right, which is the essential problem to solve is the fact that they're just so completely there's a realm where it's like it's completely unusable without the racial bonus, right? And it's just kind of like how do you give another suit class a penalty for that, but still somehow allow them to get a usable gun? That's kind of the interesting question. You're right. It's pretty difficult, but that's the unfortunate part I see in creating a racial dynamic where everything has a very noted, almost unusably difficult obstruction in its mechanics, and then the racial suit negates that. Well, you might as well say that you have to fit it on that racial suit. It's kind of like a nod that you can fit it on something else. Not everything has to be like the cloak, right? The cloak is like that for the scout class, for the scout role. It's essentially symbolic that you can even fit the thing on other suits, right? And that's good because it's a very powerful item. Guns, I don't see so much that way. So
well, because in the case of a cloak, you're defining a feature of that particular role, where a gun is everyone has a gun, and to an extent every suit is a combat suit, so you can't make guns useless on everything except an assault suit, because then what's the point? So we kind of go back to that tough balancing act of where it needs to feel viable, but if you put it on that racially bound suit, then it really shines, and it's all down the numbers. I mean, I think the concept is solid, that you've got the assault suit that offsets the downside of the gun. That's awesome. I like that. But it all comes down to the number balancing, and that's just, trial by fire. You got to try it out and see how it performs in game. It's not something you can just look at the numbers and go, oh yeah, that's going to work by plugging this in. So, we'll see,
I wonder if they could, for instance, with the rail rifle, they have the kick. and they have the charge up time. You kind of wonder if they could do less emphatic bonuses on the racial suits to both of those, so that the ceiling is not as high on both of those attributes for the negative effects, right? And that way it's usable for another player. But then you can decrease less emphatically in both those pools, and you have a less gimped gun, right? But it's still usable for other people.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Just basically
Touch
putting
kick, well, for instance, is basically
multiple downsides that are less painful, and then bonuses which are less extreme but apply to all those downsides. That's pretty solid. I like that.
To me, it sounds like what you guys are talking about. With the cloak goes to the scout, as that's very symbolic for what the scout does. The sentinel gets his resists because he's a defender. It sounds like the role of the assault class is becoming more defined as far as being a weapons specialist.
I mean, certainly, there are other complications in this entire system, right? Like, this is one of the reasons why I try to avoid speculation. But like I said, I don't have much other options right now. But there are other kind of meta balance issues in the different role classes and their niches and the map design. So when we start trying to define roles, I mean, this is one of the problems with heavies right now. There's a lot of distaste for heavies that comes out in the forums, and I don't like running into heavies, and I feel like that's not because they don't have a clear role definition, but because a role definition of CQC happens to harmonize really poorly with the map design, in that the map design is very close quarters oriented in almost universal in an almost universal sense across all the maps. You end up with a lot of CQC.
If it wasn't CQC, then that would make the heavy kind of useless.
If it was universally not CQC, but there's very little variation is the point. And I've gotten off on this topic before. They're not going to change the maps, right? It makes these type of speculative vacuum conversations difficult, because it's like trying to fix your paper cut while you've got like a gunshot wound in your side, right? Like, well, I've got a band-aid on that paper cut, but the gushing wound seems to still be a pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes that's what you're saying. Like the dust.
Yeah, you totally nailed it there. I think that in almost all maps, points of interest, namely around objectives, places people are heading to, it's almost all CQC. You rarely find objectives that are actually out in the open where range is very important. The heavy would actually be useless.
And they keep nerfing the rail rifle.
Yeah, I know. Because, it's a long-range weapon. Let's have it give a crap load of recoil so you can't hit anything at range. But that aside, I don't think that Leither is saying that maps should all be big open maps where the objectives are exposed out into the open and make heavies useless. I think he's saying that the ratio of close quarters objectives is much, much higher than, more open air, less cover, where range is more important. And I think that makes the heavy extremely useful, because pretty much no matter where you're going, you're going to run into a heavy, because the heavy is going to be entrenched into a little, close quarters building or something where that objective is placed. So it's advantageous to play as a heavy, because people have to come to you, and when they get there, you're going to be in the prime territory where you can just tear them apart, because they're forced to come in close quarters. You can't have a long range player stick in a long range objective. They have to come in to fight the heavies and the scouts in very tight CQC pretty much on all objectives in the game, and that makes it very difficult and frustrating for players that want to play a little more nimble, lower HP, long-range fighters, because they have to come in and fight at a situation that's not beneficial to them no matter where they go. And I think that kind of polarizes what people want to play as, because, I mean, shit, who wants to have a rail rifle when you have to defend an objective at, 20 meters?
And, there are other things I like to harp on about this. I would love for there to be more supply depots in better places on maps. I would love there to be alternative options for switching your fit, especially when you consider that we had this problem in PC, and this conversation comes up with AV, infantry-based AV. It's a hike to get to a supply depot almost universally, right? So even if we, had more varied maps, one of the other things that would be nice to see, I'm just totally speculating tonight, it's great. It would be nice to see an ability to swap or to bring an asset in that would allow you to swap your gear more dynamically. Because right now in Dust, I know I get people, when I used to run PC games, I put people in a suit and they didn't leave that suit. They didn't leave that role, mostly. I mean, there are of course some exceptions, notable exceptions, but for the large majority of people, they got in that suit and they stayed in it because you can't ask people to kill themselves because you got clone count to worry about, right? And the hike to a supply depot is bad. And so even imagining more varied maps, I'd also like the ability to change suits, and I feel like that would be a lot more dynamic. I would love to see a Dust where people are actually adjusting a lot more rapidly to the in-game situation by changing what they have out. Changing their weapon type, their ammo types, their armor and shields, whether they're focused on those. PC games would be great like that. Pub games would be great like that. I've almost never changed my suit and weapon in order to take advantage of its damage type. I did it once, and I was fighting Frost Bunny, I believe, who is a very good player, and he was in a shield suit, and I switched into something Scrambler based because I was salty and I wanted to kill him. That's the only time, and it was in a pub match.
Okay, so how do you balance that though? Because I could see that being abused, so that someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to lose my proto suit," and they instant switch to their blueprint suit.
Well, that's a kind of persistent problem that would need to be fixed.
So you would get, if you want to spawn with that additional suit, you're basically spawning in with both suits.
Yeah, I mean, so the issue is that people's health comes back in full when they switch suits. Not that they have the ability to switch suits, to me. I agree, that's kind of problematic. It's something they never fixed. Well, they kind of fixed it because they actually physically took supply depots off maps at one point, and they never came back. Line Harvest, the 4-point that are in a square with the pillars on the sides. You guys might know it.
And the
it's
tabletop
from E3.
in the middle.
Yeah, the tabletop. Perfect. The tabletop map. There actually used to be 2 more supply depots on the map, and they just removed them.
I could not imagine that. That would be ridiculous.
No, they were right between I'm trying to get the letters right, between B and D. So they were between points
B and
that
Charlie
belong,
and Alpha Delta.
that belonged to opposite teams at the beginning of the game. So they were fighting. They were battlegrounds. Most of the time they were blown up by tanks, but
because back then it was easy.
Yeah, especially with a railgun. But that kind of, the other thing I would see is having something we always used to talk about deployable installations, but even a vehicle, the classic Sunder from PlanetSide 2, having an asset that can be destroyed relatively easily, but provides this functionality, would add this we need to destroy that dynamic. We need to bring one in. We need to, damn it, we just lost it. They just lost it. Push, do this. There's so few things in Dust that have that kind of tactical dynamic that we did X. I have a unique thought. I have a unique tactical perspective, and we're going to use that. Most of Dust is decided in slugfests at the letters. There are very few tactics that go into it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That I think the original intention was that, you can just drop in a supply depot, wherever you wanted it, and you could then use that for tactical significance. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. So I think that the ability to swap instantaneously wherever you are is ridiculous. I think that's obviously not good, but making the availability to actually change suits a little more accessible is pretty reasonable. Something like a mobile supply depot would be an interesting thought to kind of dive into. Something that could maybe replenish ammo, or allow people to switch suits depending on what kind it is. Who knows? But I think the ability to actually adapt to a changing battlefield is actually a pretty cool idea. I wish that we could see more of that. And you kind of touched on it, where a lot of issues with vehicle AV bounds, and I've harped about this for a while, is that if every assault suit was a commando and had 2 light weapons, it wouldn't be a problem because you'd have high saturation of AV on the field. But currently, most suits, if they want to run AV, are stuck with a sidearm, and so they feel naturally gimped against everyone else around them. But if they have the ability to actually switch suits more readily and have access to AV more readily, then you can actually afford to make vehicles powerful, because if they aren't careful, everyone in the area gets switched to AV and just nuke the shit out of them, which again is cool. You can maybe drive up an LIV, and he can flip on his mobile supply depot and they can swap their suit there, switch to AV, and then go charge the tank. I think that would be really interesting and cool. And it would certainly make things a little more dynamic, rather than you're going to be in a forge gun this whole time and you're going to sit up there and you're going to watch for tanks, and that's your job for this PC match. I mean, that's kind of boring, And I wish that you could, like you said, have some more tactical significance, that you're moving assets around, you're changing suits on the fly, you're modifying your roles as you go to actually make it a little more interesting on a moment-to-moment basis, rather than I'm going to be a forge gunner this round, and that's all I'm going to do because it's too hard to get off my tower, or drag my fat ass over to the supply depot to swap out to a heavy machine gun or something.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Eve had this problem. It's like, oh, we need a new ship doctrine on the fly. Titans. That was the answer. Titans, carriers, motherships. So what's to say there won't be like a medium vehicle or a medium assault vehicle that's kind of like a mobile supply depot? There was someone on Skype saying, no, this is a bad idea, stop. Or like you get a fitting option where you choose your secondary vehicle, and there is a logi, like a player logi, that has a different type of nano hive where you can jack into the nano hive, and depending on what your suit was, it costs X amount of nanites, and then you can, if there's enough nanites in that hive, then you can change into that suit. Does that make sense? Like you get a secondary suit that you deploy with, like a secondary suit option.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
What it can be hard to do is like, I hate to say this, there's certain range of teams who have enough discipline to take proper advantage of that kind of thing when it goes in, but it can be hard to take in a team and like coordinate your set, because now you have a second suit that you have to get everybody into, and it's like, what's your second suit? Everyone needs to have X second suit. But it is an interesting thought to limit the amount of availability of additional fittings. I don't know if it's necessary, but we speculate, right? Like, it's not going to happen. I would give this story, though. One of the reasons I love moving parts and changing suits and battlefield dynamics. Imagine this story where your team, your field commander wants to bring in a tank, okay? And so he's in the middle of battle, and he calls a 4-man squad of people to go to a hill with some AV, which sounds very strange. They're ordered, the squad leader does it. They do it without question. And he does that so that the tank can get called in. So the tank gets called in, and those people up on the hill are there for when the enemy team calls in a medium attack vehicle, right? Or a mobile supply depot to try to switch out their suits. And they're already there to kill this mobile supply depot. That kind of two-step logic is not something that really frequently happens. in Dust, because there's just not enough tactical depth in the game. It's usually a step-by-step, one-step thing. I'm going to send people here. He doesn't have people there. And maybe the second step is, if they die here, I'll have them respawn here, right? That's about the most you get out of Dust. I'd just love to see additional things that allowed for two-step dynamics for clever shit, basically.
And I think that would. I mean, I'm a little biased because I'm a vehicle pilot, as many of you know. But I think vehicles offer unique ability to kind of have some more of those, like Lethargic said, like in Eve, you've got the carriers and the Titans and whatnot, and you can kind of take that sort of logic to vehicles in Dust and fit modules on them, which gives them the ability for suit refits or resupplies on ammo and whatnot. And I think that's a good platform, making them more than just I'm an LAV, I drive you from your spawn to the objective and then I blow up. Or, I'm a tank, I just kill everything I see. It gives them a little more interest in use rather than kind of the single purpose they have right now. And I think, like Leither said, it allows for much more advanced tactics in multi-step thought processes, which is always good. It makes the game more in depth and it makes it more interesting rather than just, gun everyone down and respawn here when you die, like you said. So I'd really like to see more of that. So I think that's hopefully something we can maybe look at. I think medium vehicles are probably not going to happen for Dust, but in terms of redoing vehicles and giving them some more additional roles to make things more interesting and a little more dynamic is definitely something worth pursuing that I hope we can see in the near future.
I think it was Iron Wolf was working on a thread where the CPM was reaching out to the community, where they're talking about what we want to see done with vehicles. What should the role of the Enforcer be? What should the role of the Marauder be? What should the role of the LLAV be? And the Logistics Dropship and the Assault Dropship? What do we want the racial parity to look like? So it sounds like the CPM, Soraya, you might be able to comment on this, or you might not be able to actually, is gathering information for the developers so that the developers can look at that and start working on that next.
Well, all I'd say is that I feel that adding vehicle variants and stuff is kind of a low-lying fruit situation because it's an easy hotfix. I don't see why we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Iron Wolf has his thread in general discussion, collecting ideas, and I've actually been working in a couple threads in feedback, working on some of the more fine tuning of those variants and working on bonuses, a little more actual design rather than conceptual stuff like Iron Wolf has been doing. So I do encourage people to check out both in general discussion and feedback and hop in there, because I mean, it is, for the vehicle pilots out there, this is something that we really need to put a lot of time and effort into to make sure it actually works right, because we get a lot of hate. I'm looking at you, Xel. So we need to make things interesting but not broken. And so we really need to get in there and have some really good in-depth discussion.
The only good tank is a dead tank.
Yeah, well, I love killing tanks too. I just like doing it inside a tank. So, to each his own.
Well, like what I had when I replied to Iron Wolf was I really liked my idea because it kind of matched the name scheme for what the Enforcers are and what the Marauders were. And I think it was kind of a lot like that in the original way. But I was thinking of having the Enforcer be like a gun platform for a tank where it specializes in having like multiple people. It's an anti-infantry type vehicle, heavily armored, lots of firepower.
All tanks should have multiple people. I just want to stop and clarify that.
Okay.
I think any ability to be effective as a single person in a vehicle should be nerfed, or at least in a tank should be.
Okay. Having said that, may I continue?
Yeah, now you can continue.
Okay. And having the Marauder, as it suggests, as a fast hit-and-run kind of anti-vehicle tank. It's probably a single person that drives it, and, it's got a lot of high anti-vehicle damage, not very great against infantry, that kind of thing. LLAV is more for healing the infantry. the drop ship is for healing the tanks or something. I don't know. I was I'll discuss that with you later. About giving vehicles like Bastion modules, like how they have an Eve for the actual Marauder class battleships, where your vehicle performs better in a certain area. In Eve, it increases your resistances, your repair rate, and it does something else. It makes you immune to electronic warfare. But I was thinking, like,
But then you
in
can't move.
right. But in the example of the LLAV, say we were to put a Bastion module, and I'm just calling it a Bastion module as a placeholder, but putting a Bastion module on an LLAV is, instead of targeting infantry, you move slower and you do AoE healing. And there's also different types of LAVs, like there was talk about a scout LAV, and I was thinking that should be something like a scanning LAV where you scan with a turret or something. I don't know. But what else was I going to say? So in the case of the Enforcer tank, the anti-infantry multiple pilot platform, what it would do is it's much like the Eve Marauder Bastion mode, where it gets a boon to its total armor hit points. And I'm talking about like a substantial boon, where it's a lot. It gets its resists up, and it does a lot more damage. Now, the thing about these Bastion modules for all vehicles is that what should happen is that you can't cancel them. They have to finish their cycle. So it's something you only want to do if you are sure that you can pull it off and not get your ship blown up. Additionally, I would like to add that I would like to keep the prices for the tanks and whatnot as the standard Madruger Gunlogi the same. But for the specialized ones, those should go back to the old tank prices, where it's like multi-million, for just how awesome and powerful and devastating they have the potential to be.
Yeah, it's definitely some good discussion. I think it's getting pretty late here, so I'd probably like to pick that up maybe next week, or join in on the forum discussions, because it is really good stuff. It's good to talk about with other people. So, one thing I'd like to mention though before we start doing shoutouts is next week we are likely going to be doing the show on Saturday earlier in the day. This is mostly because there's a lot of people that actually want to get on the show, but due to the time zone and the date, Sunday nights are not good. So we're gonna most likely push it up to a Saturday just for next week. Saturday early in the day. We'll get some exact times posted up on Twitter and when that's exactly happening, so that people can sign in and listen in if you want. But our recordings will go up as usual. But was there anything else quick before you guys wanted to do shout outs here?
Yeah, actually, I want Xel was talking to me about how I had in my signature that I was running for CPM 2. And yeah, it's true. That is something that I'm looking at doing, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, that's good. It's obviously CPM election is still quite a few months away, so it's
Of course.
It's hard to say, but it's good to show that people are engaged and actually want to take part in the election and be part of the process. Because I think CPM1 for the most part has done some pretty good stuff, and I know Xel has made an effort to get on here, and Iron Wolf as well, and all the regulars that show up here from CPM that talk about what they talk about in the meetings and whatnot. I think it's good to see people that are willing to get up on a public forum and actually discuss within their NDA limitations, obviously, but discuss that they actually are actively working on things. And we have fun probing them for information, which they then cower into a corner and beg us to leave them alone. But it's good to have people that are engaged that actually want to run for CPM, because it is an important deal, and I'm looking forward to the election myself, because it's going to be good stuff. But yeah, good to hear that, man. So we're probably going to move into shoutouts now. If you haven't listened to the show before, Lethargic, basically just give a shout out, to your corp, your mom, your dad, your cat, whatever you want to do. And yeah, so we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Shout out to my girlfriend. She is listening, and she doesn't understand a word of what we're talking about, but she just wanted to listen anyway to just be a part of it because she supports me in my gaming habit. And a shout out to Bloodline Rebellion. You guys rock, even though I can't understand half of you as half of you speak Spanish.
I have to say you're very lucky. A girlfriend that supports you in your gaming habit, that is a fantastic thing indeed.
Yeah, I've had ones that don't, and it didn't end well. So good for you. they're a rare find, so you're a lucky guy. Leither?
Sure. I'd like to give a shout out to Aeon Amity. Aeon has been writing some really fantastic threads about Legion, about the state of CCP Shanghai, and if you haven't read them, you should go read them. And shout outs to him for writing some fantastic content.
All right, good stuff. And Soraya?
I will give my shout out to Lethargic for giving us a new guest, because it's rare that we get someone we haven't had on before, and braving the fun and excitement of that. Oh, and I hope you come back.
I want to. I definitely want to. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to join us, man. Just give us a heads up on Skype, and we'll be good. So yeah, thanks for coming in. I'll give a shout out to True Adamance. Actually, he's been True Adamance in breaking stuff. Yeah, I know. But he's been having some really good discussions with me in breaking on those vehicles.
I just can't give my shout out to a Damar. They're just so evil. I just can't do it.
Well, and I often want to smash my face into the desk when he starts going on a RP rant and he gets a little into the role playing, and I'm like, just let's just drop it for 5 seconds and discuss the actual concept here. But getting him to disengage is always a feat. But I'm glad. But yeah, he's definitely a good guy to talk to, and you can get him to calm down. And praise be to Godin. He's begging me in Skype, groveling and threatening to kill kittens if I didn't praise him, I guess. So shout out to Godin. He keeps me entertained in the Skype chat. And shout out to OSG Planetary Operations, my corp. You guys are awesome. You're always supportive. I enjoy playing with you, and definitely am proud to be your CEO. And hopefully Jason will be back someday. He's still away on business. We have not heard from him, but we're hoping to get him back soon because, again, he is much better at this than I am. So we want him back. But with that, guys, I really appreciate you showing up. New guest this week, some good stuff. We'll probably catch up on the vehicle discussion a bit more next week. I think that's a good topic, and I hope it's something that CCP addresses, and I think the community can really pile in and get some good feedback going on that. So,
what time are you planning on doing the discussion next week? Because if you're going to talk about vehicles, I want to be there.
We will let you know. I admittedly did not plan ahead as much as I should have, but we will hammer down an exact time. Because like I said, there are some people that wanted to get on and say their bit. So we're going to try to accommodate their time, since some UK guests and whatnot. It's a very bad time for them because they're obviously many time zones away. So we'll let you know once we find out from them, and we'll move on from there.
That's going to be a very long episode, I think.
Probably might be a multi-parter, but it's good stuff. And we may not do the vehicles next week since we do have the special guests from various time zones. So we'll see. We'll hammer out the details and let everyone know via Twitter and the forums. But with that, guys, just thanks for our new guests. Thanks for our regulars. We appreciate you coming on and discussing with us. So this is Biomassed episode 29, I think. Signing off.